I think you need to actually put something there. You're supposed to edit it or do whatever you want.
What did we do last time?
I don't know. You just whatever you want to say. Hello and welcome. And then say the name of the podcast and the tagline.
All right. Stop talking so I can do it.
Okay.
Hey, everyone. Welcome to Untitled Podcast with Art. It's an art podcast about pop culture and a pop culture podcast about art. I'm one of your hosts, Simon.
And I am Chris. And today we're talking about the 2024 A24 film Problemista, written by, directed by, and starring Julio Torres, and also starring Tilda Swinton, who is amazing. We're recording this on the 4th of July, and what's more patriotic than an immigration tale? We definitely planned it this way.
I didn't realize it was the 4th of July until I woke up and thought, why am I not working today?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely thought it was Saturday, and then I was like, wait, I get a 4-day weekend.
Thursday.
It's Thursday. Yay.
That's the beautiful thing about creative pursuits. It's that when you have a surprise day off from work, I mean, it's not a surprise, but when you have a day off from work that you don't normally have, you work on your other job.
Yeah, we've known this day is coming for like the entirety of the Gregorian calendar.
I know, but yeah. Still, it's like I could be doing nothing, but here we are. And we'll talk about why we're doing this with our precious time off when we only have so much time on Earth with this film, because this film is kind of about that, but we'll get into that later. Chris, what's this movie about?
Yeah, well, the IMDb synopsis tells us that Alejandro is an aspiring toy designer from El Salvador, struggling to bring his unusual ideas to life in New York. As time runs out on his work visa, a job assisting an erratic art world outcast becomes his only hope to stay in the country.
So there's art in this.
Yes, there is art in this. And we actually see it pretty early on.
But I have a question.
What?
Why did you pick this movie? I mean, I guess we picked it, but we saw it in theaters.
Right.
And it came out recently.
It came out in like March, I think. Well, I think our local theater had an early release. But yeah, we originally saw this in March, and we knew, I think immediately, of course, that we wanted to do this for the podcast. But then the only way to keep seeing it was to keep going back to the theater. So we had to just wait until it came out on however you get the movies on the TV at the home. We had to wait until then because we needed to be able to take notes and stuff.
Yeah, I don't have any idea about how you get the movies on the TV at home. They just appear there.
It's a boyfriend job. That's all I know. I have nothing to do with making the movies appear on the TV.
Heteronormative.
But also my lived experience.
We'll define it as not a Chris job. That's less problematic.
Yeah, exactly.
But let's talk about why we saw this movie and like jumped it to the top of our queue. We have a list of other media we want to approach on this show, but why this one right away? What about this one made you say, I got to talk about this?
I mean, I think that it is the art is definitely front and center in this movie. You do see the fine art world, and you see all different levels of the fine art world. You see the world of like the bigger name galleries in New York. You see the rich kid interns, you see the poor kid interns, and just all sorts of different ways that someone can enter into that world. And it's also, I don't know, I think it's just a really lovely movie. I liked this movie a lot, and I am very excited to talk about it just generally with people.
I think it's also worth pointing out that, we got the idea for this show talking about the good and bad ways that popular media depicts contemporary art. And there are a lot of bad examples. I mean, that was kind of the joke at the beginning, right? It's that even shows that mean well, like Broad City, for example, get some of it right and don't get all of it right. This one, to me, felt pretty refreshing. It's very clear that people who made this have a lot of experience. Not necessarily great experience, but they have a lot of contact with the contemporary art world, which was very refreshing.
Yeah, and I think that it gets kind of its appropriate skewering without falling into like as many sad, bored tropes that you often see when representing the art world. Like, how many times have we seen the trope of Oh, the white canvas, isn't it beautiful? In a fine art museum. It's worth $20 million. And I just get so sick of seeing that in contemporary media. And I feel like this movie does a good job of poking a little fun while also still, I think, accurately sort of like representing that world with care.
Yeah, for sure. Well, let's get into it then, shall we?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. So as you were saying, right when we start this film, from the opening credits, you are hit in the face with art. The opening credits are superimposed over full screen close-ups of paintings. Chris, did you have anything to say about those paintings?
No, I took note of them. I think I was caught up in kind of another part of this opening sequence and maybe paid a little bit more attention to kind of this sort of sculpture that he was building with his mom. But I did notice the paintings, and I was interested in learning more about those.
What
Will
did
you teach me?
What did you notice about them?
At the first glance, there was something to them that felt very, I didn't spend a terribly long time with them, but they looked to me like they had some sort of mid-century, like Mexican contemporary art vibe to them. I can't really put my finger on it, but something of that nature.
Funny you should say that. These are by Justin Liam O'Brien, who was born in 1991 in Flushing, New York.
Yeah, that's an Irish last name if
Yeah.
I've ever heard one.
Hey, there are O'Briens in Mexico.
Yeah. I think that
He might be Mexican. I don't know. Anyway. Justin Liam O'Brien
Yes.
of unknown descent, unknown to us. I looked him up, and what I found was that I wasn't super familiar with Julio Torres' work before we saw this movie. I'd seen some of his stand-up special, My Favorite Shapes, but I wasn't super familiar with him beyond, oh, that's that kid from SNL with the colorful hair. Man, I sound old.
He wears the big pants.
He wears the big pants.
And the glitter.
He's always sparkly.
He's always sparkly.
Anyway, I looked up a bit about what was the art in this movie, not just the art that was on the sets, the art that was, I guess you'd call it diegetic art, like it's a part of the movie, but what about the titles, right? Everything clearly has this very, art sensibility to it where they don't just put the titles over a shot, they put the titles over a painting. The painting is the whole screen. So those paintings were by Justin Liam O'Brien. I'm going to read you here his bio from, man, I need to look up the gallery names before we start this show. Like they all have such ridiculous fucking names. Semiose?
Oh.
Semios?
Semiose.
Yeah.
Semiose.
Yeah, I don't get out enough to be able to know how to pronounce this.
I'm just more of a reader.
Yeah, I know how to spell it.
I know how to spell it. I spend most of my time reading and, doing quiet meditative things instead of speaking and letting people know my thoughts and opinion.
Yeah, visual art is really meant to be read.
Yeah. Like Shakespeare. Wait, no. Opposite.
His bio on the Semiotext gallery
Just
in
commit
Paris.
to one.
I don't
Just commit.
know. They're all equally bad when I say them. His bio on that gallery website says he's a narrative painter. He paints a lot of these rounded male forms that are informed by his work, his professional work as a 3D animator. So you can see how these are paintings, but everything's kind of, I don't know, bulbous, like round and soft. They're both flat and voluminous at the same time.
Well, it's very eggy.
Yes.
Which I think I will get into more, but yeah, those rounded shapes are very evocative of the like shading on the still lifes of the eggs that we see throughout the film.
Yeah, the title card in the film it's an orange background, looks like a sunset. It's got some kind of Halloween vibes. There's a hand reaching out over the word Problemista. It's kind of like a, I don't know, Cruella de Vil, Wicked Witch of the West, kind of a like curly sleeve. And then there's another hand offering that one an egg, and that one has a blue sleeve. These are pretty close to O'Brien's general style from what I've seen of his work, but I will say it's a bit more pointed. All the characters he draws normally, they really feel like they're kind of grown-up Cabbage Patch Kids or something. Oh, we're going to talk about Cabbage Patch Kids a lot today.
Oh yeah, we got a lot to talk about with Cabbage Patch Kids.
A line that jumped out to me from his bio on his gallery website: his paintings capture subjects of identity, isolation, sadness, and humor set in a changing world. And the isolation, sadness, and humor, that hit me before I even read the bio, right? The minute you see his paintings, you're going to feel that. Are you looking at them right now by chance?
Yeah, I'm looking around at some of his work just on Google Images. And yeah, I mean, with that bio and like that artist statement, I definitely understand, with this movie, like why, the decision was made to bring him in to do these title cards. This movie deals so much with themes of like loneliness, isolation, it's this journey of a young man.
Yeah. What you see there is a lot of, rounded gradient figures, pretty much always masculine. At least the main subjects are always masculine. They're often alone or together, looking very melancholy. There's a lot of party scenes that feel like parties that you would go to in an apartment somewhere, maybe in New York, maybe somewhere else. The subject will be kind of alone on their phone or something, and there's a swirl of people around them, and they're in the center, but no one notices them.
I really get big Nicole Eisenman vibes from this. I'm gonna pop a link right in here for you to take a look at. So I just saw this show at the MCA here in Chicago. Great show. It will probably be closed by the time we ever get this episode out. But Nicole Eisenman deals so much with that like loneliness and isolation and crowds kind of feeling.
Oh, yeah.
And I feel like with New York, that is such a common theme in any media about New York. You're always alone in this sea of people. And, I love seeing kind of like so close together this juxtaposition of Eisenman's work, who, she has a very female point of view and doesn't shy away from that in her work, with this Justin Liam O'Brien's work. I feel like I could see a two-person show with them really easily and how they deal with these different themes, both stylistically and in terms of content.
Yeah, they both really communicate this kind of isolation, emotional isolation, but not physical isolation in a different way. Because the painting you just showed me, the eye really glides over it. There's not one focal point. There's so much detail. Every interaction is detailed, tells a story. There's probably 30 people in the scene or more, but all of them are telling a story. In the O'Brien works, that's kind of similar, but there is a focal point. It's one person usually, or two people, and they're either in a very empty room where they're kind of, the figures are rounded, but the architecture of the room is really hard and angled and really makes the negative space feel harsh. I really appreciate how Julio Torres brought a lot of people. A lot of his friends are in this film. And from what I can tell from reading reviews and interviews, he brought in a lot of other makers and a lot of other creatives that he's close to or knows or felt comfortable reaching out to, and asked them like, hey, I want to put your art in my film. And I think that's really beautiful. And I want to see more projects like that.
Yeah, I think when I say that I feel like this movie treats the art world with care, that's definitely a part of it. And yeah, we'll talk more about why I think that as well. But yeah, I really appreciated that too about this movie.
Hold on, I'm sorry. This podcast would not be complete if we didn't just ham fist in some dick jokes.
Oh, okay.
Well, it's not a joke. No, it's just like, I swear I'm not just choosing art that depicts penises to try to meet the standard we set in our last episode. But when I looked up O'Brien's work on one of his gallery websites, the work that probably grabs your eye is one called Auto de Fe from 2021.
Yeah, that does indeed grab my eye.
Why are you laughing, Chris?
Well, there's a lot of nudity. And, it looks like somebody is attempting to suck their own dick.
On this show, this is a family show, we say self-fillet.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that one's safe for work. And I mean, this style very much reflects the style that we see in those title cards. And, I do not think that we talked that much about penises in the last episode. We talked about balls, and those are different.
I'm just
Ask a doctor.
mentally flipping through the Rolodex of like notes from health class in high school in my head to be like, wait, technically are the penis balls? I mean,
No. They are different. Go take
Testes.
a
Okay.
basic health class again.
All right. Yeah. You're going to tell me about my own body.
Yeah.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
We did. We talked a lot about balls.
Okay, yes.
This one is more penis forward. Anyway.
This one is quite penis forward. In fact, I don't really see much balls.
Yeah, I feel like we're being kind of disrespectful to this work, but I feel like it's a little tongue in cheek too.
I get that feeling. But yeah, there's a lot of, I see a lot of like angle and a lot of like architectural influence in these works. It's very geometric.
Looks kind of like early Renaissance, I guess.
Yeah.
Before like perspective was really, really nailed down.
Yeah. Like they're getting there, but they still haven't had like Da Vinci come along and be like, no, look, let me do it.
Yeah. It looks very old in that sense intentionally.
Yeah.
So just to describe what I saw in this, the bottom half of the painting depicts a young looking man or, masculine figure.
Interestingly enough, yes, it's obviously a masculine figure because of the penis. However, there is something about this person that also seems like it could be female in form just because the like flowing blonde hair and stuff. There's ambiguity both within that figure, but not so much, there's not that ambiguity with the figure in the background. And then there's the figure in the far right corner that seems also coded female. However, their chest isn't. So there's a lot of androgyny, I think, going on in this image. And yeah, I think that's interesting.
Yeah. You've got the masculine figure on the bottom and this kind of golden ratio. Is that what it is?
Yeah, golden ratio.
Golden ratio kind
golden
of curve.
Shower.
Yeah, nice one.
No.
This golden ratio curve, trying to suck themselves. And then above that is another masculine figure, legs splayed out, arms raised overhead as if doing jumping jacks. Those two shapes contrast pretty heavily, right? That one is really boxy, kind of an X.
Do we know for sure they're attempting to auto-fillate? Because there's something to this image too with like the kind of neo-classical architecture in the background and like the reference to the golden ratio that makes me think like young Olympians, calisthenics, like we're doing aerobics nude in the hot Greek sun kind of stuff.
It's a good point. I swear I'm not just projecting the autofellatio here.
Okay.
But now that you mentioned that, the figure on the bottom could be like they're looking directly at their own penis dangling in their face. And it could be that it's just in their face and they've got to deal with that and they can't look away from it.
Right. This would be the yoga pose plow. And if you were doing that nude and had
plow? I'm sorry, what? Why?
Well, I don't remember off the top of my head what the original like Sanskrit name is, but yeah, it's known as plow.
Ready to plow.
It's halasana. And I mean, at that point, the penis becomes your drishti. The drishti in yoga is the thing you focus on to like clear your mind. It's a meditative practice. So maybe that's what's going on here.
I mean, that sounds like what you've told me about yoga so far.
Yeah. But I've never done yoga with a penis, so I don't know.
Oh, it's omnipresent.
Yeah, I can imagine.
So, yeah, you mentioned there's people in the top right corner of this too. There's one figure who's also nude, one of the three nude figures in this painting, who is looking at them, not quite judgmental, not quite bored. It's either disappointed, whether in themselves or in the figures in front of them.
Looks tired.
Tired, yeah. But then behind that figure, there are a couple clothed passersby, also depicted as masculine.
Yeah, the person in red is like a rubbernecker. They look like they're like, wait, what's going on over there?
And they look really disapproving of this scene. So the title of this piece, Auto de Fe, the definition of that is, I think it's Portuguese. It's the ceremony for pronouncing judgment by the Inquisition, which was followed by the execution of sentence by secular authorities, broadly the burning of a heretic. So the judgment there really, really feels like it's intentional from that rubbernecker there.
Mm-hmm.
But that rubbernecker, keep that person's face in mind and what they might be thinking about the scene in front of them. Because when I was looking up this painting, I looked on O'Brien's Instagram and he had posted this. The caption was, "Excited to show this painting at Untitled Art Fair with Richard Heller Gallery in Miami, smiley face." And then there's a comment like a few down.
I'm reading it. Not good on the family wall. Come on. It's an Instagram comment. Yeah, not good on the family wall. I love it. What is this in response to? Like, I mean, just the painting, but like, what is the family wall? Are they saying this wouldn't be good in my den?
I mean,
we could try and figure out what the hell any Instagram comment, there could be an entire podcast over what the hell is this Instagram commenter trying to say, and we would never know.
I mean, I'll bet if you looked at this person's family wall, and if it is covered with art, you would find more than a few
confusing
thinly disguised penises.
Yeah. I don't know anything about this person, so
that's it's a prize penises.
Yeah. Well.
So yeah, I've rambled on enough about the opening credits. I really like O'Brien's work here. So now we can actually get to the movie. Now that we've been recording for 35 minutes.
We spent 35 minutes on the opening credits. It's all good. Okay, well, you were talking about the architecture, the angled architecture and stuff, and I think that's a great way to talk about the opening scene of the movie that's kind of interspersed with credits. And so we have Alejandro, and it's young Alejandro in his childhood in El Salvador with his mother Dolores, who is a professional artist. And in super Disney fairy tale like fashion, Ollie's dad is nowhere to be found, and absolutely no one cares that he is not around. And so they're in this like idealistic rainforest jungle garden setting, and they're working on a project together. He's kind of describing to his mom this structure he wants to build, and his mother's drawing it. He wants Cinderella stairs. She suggests that it should have star-shaped windows. And we start to see this sort of fantastical playscape type form take place in this meadow. How would you describe the structure that we see here?
It feels like it's from a kid's theme park, but not like an American big kids theme park.
A little low rent theme park.
Well, Dutch, I was going to say, but same thing. Having spent part of my childhood in the Netherlands, there was a theme park called Efteling.
Having grown up low rent. Yeah, yes, I thought that it looked like a potentially like rusty lawsuit prone McDonald's playscape, but from like 1972, where they were quickly like, we can't ever build another one of these again. We have to take it out.
Tetanus.
Yeah, exactly.
Something must be done.
Exactly.
But I do want to say that theme park I went to in the Netherlands when I was a kid, it was kind of a glorified park, but it had like cool tree houses and stuff. And you got to dress up from their collection of costumes, like a knight or an elf or whatever. It was fucking rad. This looks pretty cool too. It's like the same thing, but it's in a rainforest.
It definitely reminds me of like Fairyland in Oakland. If you've ever been there by Lake Merritt.
Wait, what is... Because I think...
You've been there.
Yeah.
I think you went there when you were a child, you told me. It's right by Lake Merritt, and it's a little, young kids theme park. And there's also, what's the one near Salem? The Enchanted Forest?
I mean, that's kind of a kids theme park.
Yeah, it's also
if the kids were on mushrooms.
Yeah. A place to take mushrooms and get kind of freaked out and have a bad trip.
I've been to Fairyland.
Yeah.
Yeah, it looks like that.
Yeah. I just got really strong vibes of like bio or organic architecture from this, like especially the way it kind of like blends with the landscape. And there's actually like a ton of that kind of architecture in Latin America. There's the architect Javier Senosiain, who is a Mexican architect who was famous for his organic architecture. And I know he's famous because I saw an article about how Dua Lipa stayed in a 4-bedroom Airbnb that cost $355 a night in a snake-shaped housing complex known as Quetzalcoatl's Nest that he designed. Here, I'm going to send you this image here. So do you see that image there of the people walking through?
I do, yeah.
Yeah, how would you describe that structure?
Tentacular. The people look really small, and the building is kind of like a motley of, it looks like a magic eye in terms of the way it's painted. It's like turquoise and kind of magenta, and it's all dabbled together like you just took a brush and
Like a sponge. Yeah.
And then there's some holes that have these like lips on them that look like tentacles, but they're holes inside it.
Yeah, this housing complex is nuts. It's in the form of a snake.
Is that a tongue? Is there a tongue just
think,
sticking out?
I think that, or it's like some kind of, because I think that I don't think that's a tongue. Maybe it is, but I've seen the mouth of this structure is like it's an open snake mouth and of the housing complex, and I don't remember if it had the tongue or not. So it might be just another feature. But yeah, I want to go stay here for research. We should go stay here.
Just write it off.
Just write it off. There's also the Nautilus house, which right below that I sent you. This architect just dealt a lot with like bringing natural shapes and the play structure that we see is definitely a little bit more taking influence from like the classic castle structure that kids tend to be interested in. But I really felt like there's this strong Latin American tradition of the bioarchitecture. Same with Casa de los Milagros in Mexico by Danilo, Veras, Godoy. Same with like the not Dali, god damn it, who is it? The person who did Sagrada Familia and all that stuff in Spain.
Gaudi,
yeah.
Gaudi.
Okay. Dali, Gaudi, that's why I always confuse them. So yeah, I got really strong vibes of that sort of architectural influence here in this sort of fantastical structure. And did you think that this structure was real at the beginning of the movie?
In the backyard?
Yeah.
Yeah, I got the sense that the character's mother, Dolores, had made this.
I thought this was all pretend, actually. And later in the movie, I'm wrong. I don't know. I just thought that this was like, they worked on it together. But then, maybe it was like in his imagination that they had actually built it and he's actually playing, just kind of in the woods or something, pretending he's in the structure. I thought it was more imaginary.
I mean, there are a lot of fantastical elements in this film, especially when it depicts, that's intentional, right? It depicts anything back in El Salvador. It's just his mother on this pretty large plot of land in the jungle in a big house where it's always kind of rainy or there's moody skies. And there's all this kind of crazy architecture and sculptures, and they're just part of everything. It seems to be drawing from Julio Torres' actual life, too.
Mm-hmm.
He was raised in El Salvador by his father was a civil engineer and his mother was an architect. He credits that with where a lot of his, art sensibilities come from. And he used to build these elaborate cardboard dollhouses with his mother. He's mentioned in another interview that what you see at the start of this film is him imagining what if they had all these materials and resources available to make the dollhouses they really want to, not just for a doll, but for him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I really love the way that El Salvador is depicted in this film. I mean, I feel that you have an immigration story, and you would so often expect for the person coming from El Salvador to have their home country depicted like terrible. It's not that way in this movie. He has this like beautiful home. He has a loving mother at home, again, who cares about the dad. And the reasons he left or in New York are his own, and they are, he wants independence. He is a dreamer. He strives for things. And I really loved that about this movie.
Yeah, it looks idyllic to the viewer, right?
Mm-hmm.
We see El
you
Salvador.
You kind of wonder why he would leave.
Yeah, why leave? Why go to New York City? Just about everyone in the movie asks Alejandro this question, kind of rhetorically, kind of as a dig at him. I mean, it gets the title of the movie, Problemista, someone who makes problems for themselves. I mean, it means troublemaker, but a bit more, I think, in this context about you are creating trouble because you like the trouble.
The reason he's in New York, he's in Bushwick, is so that he can apply to the talent incubator program at Hasbro. And it's because the online form will only let him apply within the United States. I guess he never heard of a VPN.
But he'd be lying then.
I guess he would be lying, and that would also be terrible. So yeah, when we first see him as an adult, we see him in this teeny tiny bedroom. It's essentially a walk-in closet in a house that he shares with 2 other people. He's doing one of those terrible applications that make you record a video of yourself. By the way, never do one of those. No job is worth your dignity of having to record yourself for an application only to get like a canned rejection email after. So impersonal.
It's not just jobs either.
Yeah.
It's like there have been art applications for like residencies that want that.
I did that once. And I hated that.
I remember the instructions being, just make this you. Don't put too much work into it. Just make it you. But talk for 2 minutes about yourself and why we should invite you here. And it's like, okay, for me, I do video stuff. I'm gonna try to make it sound good. I'm gonna try to make it look good. But I don't think they want that. I think they want someone who's comfortable being on the internet and recording a TikTok or a Snapchat or whatever of themselves and sending it to them. I don't know. It felt weird and like exclusive to me because I hate being on camera.
Yeah, there's a certain sort of, you have to prove your marketability in an application.
And that you're going to Instagram about it while you're there.
Yeah, and you're going to look great in the reels that we do and stuff like that. And that's definitely a part of having to do a video application, and where you're just talking straight into your camera like he's doing here is nothing like actually like sitting down and having a conversation with somebody. So again, yeah. Untitled podcast with art tip, never do one of these. It's just not okay. And we shouldn't let people treat us like it is okay. There are already way too many automated processes in our daily lives.
Also, how do you do one of those with 2 people, right?
I know, yeah. But he's doing this. He's describing some of his toy ideas. And I love this scene because it becomes clear that he's totally inherited his mother's artistic sensibilities here. He says, toys these days are wonderful, but they're a little preoccupied with fun. And one of his ideas is a doll that is kind of like a Barbie, except she has her little fingers crossed behind her back. This, I believe, will add much tension and intrigue to any dream house. Life can't be all parties.
I actually just kept a running list of notes about these throughout the film because they're interspersed at different points and they're kind of thematically related to what's going on, but they're also just kind of put in there for some comedic punctuation.
Mm-hmm.
A couple other favorites I had. A toy truck with a tire that slowly deflates. Children must know that they are running out of time.
Yeah. I love that one as like the metaphor for Ollie's entire journey throughout this film. Yeah. I think that like this movie and like the toy ideas throughout actually really remind me of the work we talked about in our last 2 episodes by Danny McDonald in the Broad City episodes. And here, I'm going to send you this.
Yeah, I'm looking at what looks like a very realistic representation of the Tin Man from The Wizard of Oz on a gallery pedestal holding $100 bill that like comes up to his hips. Is he pulling his own like machine heart out?
Yeah.
Next to a bunch of stumps and a chainsaw. There's a caption here.
Oh, I wrote this caption kind of in the voice of Alejandro. So I was thinking like the Tin Man stands amongst deforestation, a reminder to children that their everyday actions come with environmental consequences. That was like the real vibe I got from a lot of Ollie's work throughout this. I mean, yeah. And so like he's a toy designer, but he so has like the sensibility of and the style of an artist. And I love all the little toy ideas throughout this. Another one of the toy ideas is smartphones for Cabbage Patch dolls displaying their uniquely complicated lives. Like Marjorie, for instance. She has a little pic of a spot inside of her mouth that she's texting to a friend because she's worried it might be something bad. And this will come back in the movie. These Cabbage Patch dolls make a repeat appearance.
A snake in a can with a sign around its neck. I'm sorry I was trapped in this can and scaring you was the only way out.
I love that one. I want that one. It's so cute.
So Alec gets rejected from Hasbro via impersonal form email. While biding his time trying to make it in New York City, he takes a job as an archivist at Freeze Corp, a company which cryogenically freezes people in order to reawaken them in the future. once that technology actually exists. Legally, this company provides a form of euthanasia, and they are the only company of its kind that caters exclusively to artists. I had a note to myself from watching this film, which is LOL exclusively to artists, because artists historically there are tons of them, a whole market of them that have money to freeze themselves.
Yeah. I mean, I imagine that, well, I don't know, because this facility looks low rent and
it looks like something out of like Eternal Sunshine for the Spotless Mind.
Yeah,
Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind.
Yeah, so I had been thinking like, well, maybe it's also like philanthropists, people who kind of fancy themselves artists but don't actually create anything. Maybe those people with money would be also here. But then I was like, I don't know. This facility does not look like it would, be something that the Broods would find themselves in.
It looks like they bought an old dentist's office.
Yes.
And the basement and turned it into rooms for these cryogenic pods for artists and their art. And the fact that it's a room with a pod plugged into the wall and a chair or a desk for the attendant to sit at, that's Ali's job. But around the room are just bubble wrapped paintings. And it really looks like it's art storage, but for the artists themselves. It's not just, these tax-free zones in Switzerland where expensive art as an asset is kept, so it's always in transit. It's like that, but it's also got the artist who makes the art themselves. So it's like, what is the hyper-capitalist hellscape extension of our current world?
Yeah, I love that. I didn't quite pick up on that, but I love the idea of like, yeah, you're gonna put the artists themselves in the Swiss vault eventually too, and keep them there for appreciation purposes. Well, Ollie oversees the collection of.
Can I add one thing there?
Oh yeah,
just a little quip before we move on. It's you're storing the golden eggs and the goose.
Right. Okay.
I don't know.
Go ahead.
Doing sound bites.
Okay. You're fired. I'm glad
I thought it was funny. No, shut up. I have a joke.
Shut up. Yeah, I know. I'm glad you interrupted me for that.
Anyway.
So bad.
There's an egg connection.
There is an egg connection. You're right. And that's because Ollie oversees the collection and frozen body of Bobby Asensio, an unknown painter who exclusively painted portraits of eggs. Let's discuss the eggs. What do you think of the eggs?
I don't know, man. They're eggs. I don't think Bobby really knows what the eggs are either.
Well, Bobby said, they're not eggs. They're a hope, a promise, possibilities, a mystery. What's inside the egg? I don't know. Is it a hen? Is it a hen with a tragic life?
I don't know this hen.
I think that the eggs can seem like kind of a joke in a way, but like if you zoom out, the egg is a really important symbol in art, culture, and history. I found this book called The Gourmand's Egg, and it's essays and things, but also recipes and stuff, but it's about the egg within art and culture. And a quote I really liked was, simply put, an egg is more than just food. It is a symbol and a shapeshifter, an industry and an inspiration, a millennia-old cross-cultural expression of rebirth, fertility, and potential.
That kind of fits with, what I've read Torres saying about like why the eggs in this. And I think part of it is a joke, but he says, I just found the eggs emblematic of a promise and the future is unfinished. Yeah,
I mean, I think like the concept of potential and rebirth are such important themes in this movie. And I think it 100% makes sense that an artist who signed himself up to be frozen and then brought back to life in the future would be obsessed with the egg. Like he is literally in there waiting to hatch again in the future. I do think that like though later in the film, when he's meeting Elizabeth Asensio, his wife, for the first time, he says he wants someone who doesn't understand art to look at his eggs and get it. And I am just not sure that these are that work, like I'm not sure why after centuries of like doing still lives and eggs and stuff, somebody would like really connect with these works in that way. And so, yeah, I think that, the egg is obviously like this important symbol. I frankly just don't think Bobby was there with his career yet before he died. Well, we'll get more into that, but they lack something in their current state.
So the narrator, when Bobby is being introduced, says, "In the ultimate act of perseverance, Bobby chose to freeze himself." And then Bobby says, "I don't know what awaits me, but maybe people will understand my aches there." And that the word perseverance there, it feels, at least at the start of the film, really tongue-in-cheek. And I feel like the movie deals with what that perseverance means quite a bit through its characters. But there's this attitude from Bobby, like, right now, things aren't working for me, but, you know, maybe it'll just happen posthumously. Like, all you need to add to the success equation is time, right? And it's just a matter of how much time.
Yeah, in the movie, there's this idea of like, he'll come back and try again. But I think really what he's hoping and what like a lot of artists hope is like they will have that posthumous success, that they will find success, they will finally be able to rest and the success will happen. And that is to say like they will have worked hard for it, but then they will finally be able to stop working for it and then it will come.
And I've had the experience of, you know, talking to some what you would call like successful artists and knowing them before, like right before they got huge, and then talking to them again after they got, you know, quite big. And you only have more work eventually. And yes, there's more money and more opportunity, but it's still more work, right? You're always working for it.
Oh, yeah, definitely. And I mean, I think that the number of people who get famous posthumously, there aren't that many more than people who get famous humously. Like the odds of success are just so low. And I think that with Bobby, yeah, he is hoping that he will have that success. And, you know, like later when he wakes up, there is this conversation happening between him and Elizabeth, jumping way ahead to the very end of the movie. But he's saying like, I don't really know if I'm into painting the eggs anymore. I think I might be off that. And it's like, yeah, because the success didn't happen while you were asleep. So do you really want to keep working for that? Or do you, it's been a long time and it didn't happen. Do you really want to give it another, you know, decade or two of your life at this point?
He doesn't have another freeze in him.
No, I can't go back into the chamber.
Probably wreaks havoc on your body.
Yeah, I can't imagine it'd be good for it. Except I guess by now they've cured cancer since he is back and not going to die again.
Well, we don't know why they unfreeze them, but we'll get to that in time.
Maybe they just need a good thaw every once in a while.
But you contrast that with, you know, Bobby at the beginning and going back to, you know, some of the interviews I read with Julio Torres. So Bobby is played by Riza. And he says, in one of my conversations with Riza, we said, imagine at one point someone told Bobby that he could make a lot of money by painting one work that wasn't about eggs. And he said, no, that's the kind of guy he is. Being an artist is about having a voice, ambition, and the dignity to pick the hardest path. In this case, it's painting eggs, and really not very many of them.
No, and that's every character in this film, too. It's Ollie, it's Elizabeth, who we are going to meet very soon, I swear. Everybody is picking the hardest path and making life so difficult for themselves. Problemistas.
When we see Alejandro working at Freeze Corp, he's texting his mom pictures of some spots in his mouth.
It'd be bad.
Yeah.
Very bad.
And we see, you know, art imitating life with his Cabbage Patch Kid. But he accidentally briefly unplugs the backup generator for Bobby's cryo chamber. He like trips over it, right?
Yeah, he like kind of gets it with his foot.
It's not very securely plugged in. It's just like plugged in with a big sign saying, don't unplug this.
No, this was an infrastructure failing. This was not his fault. I don't understand. Yeah, there's a sign that's like, don't unplug under any circumstance. It has to always be connected. And the fact that it can be at all it's a failing on Freeze Corp's part. It's not his fault.
I didn't really think about this watching the movie, but talking about it now and having read Julio Torres talk about his experience with immigration and where this movie came from, and then the idea about like the drop-down menu on the form to apply for the incubator in the film. It's almost like this thing about the plug is just this distilled American experience of there are things that can go wrong, but it's all on you, little person, with your limited resources to rectify them. Like, yes, we could have made it so you can't unplug this, but instead, you're going to unplug this by accident, and we're going to fire you for it.
Right. So he's leaving that night after accidentally unplugging it. He gets into like a little back and forth with some sort of supervisor about like, did you unplug it? He says, the backup is currently connected. And yeah, in the lobby as he's leaving that evening, he meets Elizabeth Asensio, Bobby's wife, for the first time. This is Tilda Swinton. She's incredible. I also just want to flag that the first time we meet Elizabeth is the first time we see that the flashlight on her phone is on, and this will recur so many times throughout this movie.
Wait, what is your read of that little motif?
So in March, when I saw this for the first time, I was like, that is such a like scatterbrained boomer thing to do. And then I since upgraded my phone to, I had like an iPhone SE, and now I have my mom's like old iPhone 14, 13. I don't know phones. I'm sorry, but it's one of the new ones with the little notch cut out on the top.
And there's no physical buttons on the face,
and
right?
I keep accidentally turning on my phone flashlight so much. I'm like, no, I'm just like her.
Thank you. Now you understand my plight.
Yes. Constantly. There's something about the interface that makes it so easy to happen.
I felt so seen by this aspect of Tilda Swinton's character.
Yeah.
Because I knew this would happen to me. Like, yeah, I have this little like mini iPhone where my fat hands keep turning on the flashlight when I don't mean to. It happens at least every other day.
It's so embarrassing.
I was working a video shoot once, and I had hired some people who were about 10 years younger than me or more. And the PA pointed out to me, oh, hey, your flashlight's on. Boomer move. And
you said, thanks, I was looking for something, dweeb.
In this well-lit office room.
Well,
it hurt me more than she could have ever known. It still sticks with me every other day when my lights turned on.
Yeah, it's pretty embarrassing.
That was
again,
years ago, and I'm growing into it now.
It's a failure on the part of iPhone, just like him unplugging the backup generator was a failure on the part of Freeze Corp. And
thank you,
that's
Chris.
fine. That's fine. I understand now. It's so easy. Maybe we need to all switch to, I don't know, Google phones or something, and this will stop happening.
We all need to just carry big flashlights on our belts.
That's smart.
Like
we should do that. Yeah.
Get them off of phones.
Yeah. We don't need it on the phone. The screen is bright enough if you're looking for something. So how would you describe Elizabeth Asensio when we meet her?
Like the stereotype or the amalgamation of every eccentric art lady I've ever known. I've known a few. Elizabeth is more vicious, but like there's just this kind of unbridled, unrecognized, middle-aged white lady rage. Energy. Yeah, it's wrathful.
It's erratic. It's wrathful. There's a spite. There's a like.
Her mascara is always smeared. Her hair is always dyed, but a while ago. She's dressed in these fabulous outfits that look like they just kind of fell onto her.
Amazing clothes. Yeah, I'm like, where do you shop? Who does it? I need to know. Yeah, whoever did the wardrobe for Elizabeth, incredible work. Like I just felt like I could really see myself in every single one of those outfits in 20 years. It's going to be me. And well, she's arguing with the Freeze Corp lady because they're raising their prices for the deluxe archival services. When we meet her, we get her in her full like wrath. We see her arguing. She's berating the Freeze Corp lady, telling her that they're robbing her. She's like, don't scream at me, even though they're talking in a very normal tone.
Has anyone ever pulled that one on you?
The don't scream at me?
When you're not screaming?
Don't raise your voice? I don't know. Maybe. I don't know. I don't fight with people that much. And if I'm yelling at them, they know that.
It's such like a weird form of victimization and dominance at once.
Yeah, it's a real pro move. It's a real finisher.
That's a finisher.
That's a finisher. So the next day, Alejandro has to come in bright and early to get fired from Freeze Corp. And I mean, this is probably for unplugging the backup generator, but it's also probably because Elizabeth can't afford to continue to pay for the deluxe package with archive. So now Bobby's body is just going to be moved into a room with no archive. But this means that Alejandro now has 30 days to find a new sponsor to stay in the country. On his way out, he encounters Elizabeth again, arguing with the freeze court lady again. She asks Alejandro if he's interested in taking on a little freelance project, and he helps her take some of Bobby's work to her loft.
Okay, so when you get to her loft, how would you describe it?
Oh, it's incredible. It is the dream. It's the artist's dream. Everything seems like it has its place. It looks straight out of a catalog. She also says she lives part of the time in Maine and part of the year in Asheville. So I guess my question is she loaded? Like Bushwick, where I assume maybe it's another part of New York, but like Maine isn't Singapore, but like it seems like she has a fair amount of money.
And yet she is always arguing with people about money.
Yes, but that's a total rich people thing to do.
Big rich
How do you think they
move.
got so rich?
By arguing about money every moment of their
every
lives
penny
at
counts,
the slightest
Simon.
inconvenience.
You would be rich if you knew this.
I would be rich if I stopped buying avocados.
Yeah, that's true too. And all things that make my life better and
3 packs
nicer.
of LaCroix a week.
That's eating into the budget, honestly. But yeah, I don't know. Maybe she's a Nepo baby. We don't know her like unmarried last name, so maybe she's a Rockefeller, but like a third cousin. She clearly has like money, and she's an art critic, so we don't really know where that money comes from. And like Bobby was an unknown painter, so it doesn't come from him.
And
endlessly,
she's clearly well connected too.
Yes, very well connected.
I do want to say that her studio loft, whatever, is gorgeous, but there are these touches that are clearly that Elizabeth has just left her mark on this place.
Yes, there are all these little vignettes around the apartment that look like they could be sculptures in a gallery. Like, here, I'm going to send you this right here. Yeah.
Yes. I wrote this note down too,
Yes.
which was USB cable from an iPhone charger, or iPad charger, wrapped several times around the spike of a stiletto heel.
Yeah. It's a like Python leather stiletto. It's perfect. And yeah, there are so many of these little vignettes in her apartment. And, little vignettes throughout the movie. Below that, you'll see this image I put in from the Gourmand's Egg, which is a photo by Bobby Doherty. And this is a photographer who he's mostly commercial and for like high-end clients. Like, you can see that this is a Gucci shoe and Balenciaga and MoMA. But I really felt like what he did here really captured that chaos of like, you've got these still lives with they're very realistic, but there's a bit of surrealism to them. And that's what I picked up on from the chaos of her apartment.
First of all, the still with the Gucci shoe that you sent me, it looks like something out of Julio Torres' stand-up special.
It totally does.
He's got like, the special is...
This could be one of his favorite shapes.
Yeah, it's him on a set with a conveyor belt that he controls with a foot pedal where he just picks up things and talks about them. It's weird. It's very charming. But one of the finale is this oversized shoe holder that's shaped like a stiletto. However, it is only for miniature shoes, and the whole thing he talks about is the impracticality of everything on that scene. It is not none of the shoes are functional. The holder itself has steps on it for the miniature shoes, and the miniature shoes are too small for even babies. And also, why would you put babies in heels anyway?
So many questions. Yeah, I love that part of the special.
But sorry, I want to like spend a bit more time on just the iPad charger wrapped around the heel of the stiletto.
It's so good.
These vignettes are shown in this brief moment of internal panic that Alejandro has upon realizing what he's walked into with Elizabeth, both physically in her loft, but also just saying, yeah, sure, I'm desperate. I'll freelance for you. You seem close to art and things that I care about. And
yeah, during this entire time, we're getting 5 nonstop perfect minutes of manic Tilda Swinton energy. Like, she's running around the loft just like calling customer service, complaining that her photos are missing from her iPad. It's amazing.
And I mean, I know this isn't just our household, but iPhone an iPad and device charging is a volatile issue. There's
no known cure.
It's also, I mean, it's really just like the everyday dread of life today, which is, oh shit, my phone's gonna die. Oh my God, what do I do? I can't call a cab home. I don't know how to do anything without this. There's the arguments we have had about who took the charger.
Who took it, Simon?
I know that is not unique to our relationship.
No.
There are all the times that your mother has called me, and it's the only reason she calls me, which is to ask about something on her iPad, which is exactly what Tilda Swinton is doing in this scene.
Yes.
But like just that little miniature tableau, which this film is full of all these little bits of like, it could be art, it could be a detail, close-up shot, quick cut in a horror movie. It's meant to be both. The music suggests the horror part of it, but the charger wrapped around the stiletto just is simultaneously to me incredibly beautiful and sent chills down my spine because it's terrifying.
I mean, the way it's wrapped, at first you're like, yeah, I can see that.
Why did she do that?
Well, yeah,
how did this come to be?
You realize like, oh yeah, it kind of got tangled there. And then you look at and it's like a knot. And then you're like, wait, somebody did that on purpose. And that's terrifying. That's crazy.
There are so many little details integrated in this film that feels like they have contemporary art sensibilities. And this is an example of them, but there are all these little moments that aren't a part of the story. They're not even really a part of the scene. They just kind of show them. There's all these little like pickup shots of like a Metro card sitting in a puddle, and there's just some trash that shouldn't really be there. It's too colorful for the scene, but it's also New York, so who knows? But there's these little bits of like artistry that go through the movie and the way it's edited and the way it's shot.
Yeah, one of my favorites that we see is the bag. It's like a purse that has gotten caught in the doors of the subway, like hanging downwards, and then just prescription pill bottles are falling out of it. And I think like for anybody who's spent much time in a city, you're like, oh yeah, I've seen that.
It feels like anything from an episode of How To with John Wilson.
Yes, definitely. This entire movie has so many of those little absurdities in it. And yeah, I feel like a real strong connection with that series.
I saw one yesterday. Someone sent me one that could have been in either John Wilson or in this film and would have fit perfectly. And it was someone walking up on the street to what looked like a pair of discarded jeans just kind of lying on the wet pavement. But as it pans up, you see that the jeans still have their belt in them, and the leg is wrapped around the back wheel of a Lime scooter, tangled in it like inextricably, which the only way to interpret that is someone was riding that thing. I mean, probably like they ran over, like those jeans got there somehow.
How did
maybe
they
were there
get
ahead of time, someone ran over them and it fucked up their Lime scooter, but also the first thing you think is maybe that they were riding their Lime scooter in those jeans, they got the back cuff tangled into them and it ripped them off of them and they just ran away from the scene.
Yeah, so many of the little stills in this movie, and also, yeah, like in How To with John Wilson, are like, how did that happen? How did that get there? Like, they're beautiful because they make you wonder, like, what on earth made this way? So she asks Alejandro if he knows FileMaker Pro. He doesn't, but no one does. And
wait, did you?
I don't even know if FileMaker Pro is a real thing, honestly.
Okay.
Is it? I do know that it's the Cadillac of file making software.
How about you describe how it plays into the scene? And then I dug a little bit and I'll get into that.
Okay. So yeah, I mean, she just asks him if he knows FileMaker Pro. He doesn't because no one does. But she hires him on a freelance basis. The project's kind of unclear, but it's something to do with Bobby's archive. And she says she can't sponsor him, but if all goes well with this project, they can see.
I mean, I don't know what your experience is with like freelancing over the past decades of your life, but I have said many times that, let's put it this way, I have inflated my knowledge of something just for the proximity to the artist and the promise of future work.
Oh, definitely. I mean, there are so many things I could definitely look into learning if I get the job.
Yeah, X-ray technician, sure. I can figure out. There's probably a YouTube video somewhere.
I am probably, yeah. As soon as he says like he doesn't know FileMaker Pro, but he could learn or whatever, you see him Googling on his phone, like on YouTube, like FileMaker Pro tutorial.
Did that with WordPress and Drupal. I'm not a web developer, but I've never said that directly to anyone before.
When I was
If
younger,
they assume that I am, it's their fault.
that's on them. When I was younger, it used to be like, oh yeah, I can learn that. Like I can learn that real quick. And now that I'm a little older, it's like, I don't know. There's a lot of stuff.
I don't want to learn it all.
I don't want to learn new things. I'm kind of done learning new things.
For like $200 or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's the other thing, the pay. We never see a discussion of salary between Elizabeth and Alejandro.
All right, so FileMaker Pro. I'd never heard of this before.
Me neither, yeah.
I thought it was made up the first time I saw this movie.
100% thought it was made up the first 3 times I saw this movie.
When I took a note about FileMaker Pro and the Notes app on my iPhone while we were watching this, I saw that my phone auto-capitalized the name.
Oh.
Which told me, oh, that's a real thing.
Uh-huh.
So I looked it up and see this link here?
Yes, I see it.
Take a look at that website. It is the website for FileMaker Pro. Tell me what you see.
Well, I see that they are an Amazon Web Services partner network. DB Services, software development and consulting. Oh my goodness, this isn't good, Simon.
No.
Oh no.
It's like an archaic text. You need some kind of PhD in the archaic internet to understand this thing.
Well, it tells me that it's efficient, easy to use, and low code.
Yeah, that seems like a relative statement.
Oh, we can try it for free. I'm going to try it.
Okay.
Oh my God. Business email. Crap.
So I looked at that.
Can we become a business really quick so that we can do this?
Yeah, LLCS up.
Yeah, okay. Chris at untitledartpod@llc.com.
Yeah, it's real. So people use this for a lot of different things. Everyone talks about how powerful and easy it is. The website visually doesn't give you that idea.
No, I can't make much sense of their website.
So an example of use that I found online, we use FileMaker Pro to store hundreds of thousands of X-ray images, patient movies, lab results, faxes, etc. A recurring theme in this film is Elizabeth asking, is there order? Are the databases in sync? She barely has a dozen paintings to inventory. She could do
there's
this.
Not a lot of
She could
work.
write this by hand. She could write it on her arm.
I think there's a little more than that, but yeah, pretty much. So the next morning, Ollie visits an immigration attorney who explains to them that he cannot be legally paid for work without a sponsor, but also that he has about $6,000 in immigration fees coming his way. This scene is juxtaposed with the scene of like this maze that Ollie has to navigate with this narrator voicing over the rules of the game. He can't take money. He has to get sponsored within 30 days. He has to pay these fees. And it's this metaphor, obvious metaphor for the immigration process.
Visual catch-22.
Exactly. And it's cute because you see him like kind of navigating this maze, doing his little walk that you see throughout the entire. He has this cute little walk throughout the entire.
Even in the darkest moments, he is just shuffling around like a little wind-up toy with his backpack.
Yeah, it's total wind-up toy. Yeah, that's exactly it. It's so adorable.
There's a little detail I liked from the scene where they're showing that vertical maze he has to climb through, just like stacking boxes and going through a trap door and coming to the next room and then having to go back down or something. There are a lot of file cabinets in it. Like the whole aesthetic is like if MC Escher designed a soul-crushing business park.
Yes.
But there's one shot where if you freeze the frame and look closely, all the labels on the file cabinets are in like webdings or wingdings. They're total nonsense. It's like hieroglyphics.
Love it. I think this image and like the callback to the maze throughout the movie kind of reminded me of a lot of immigrant art stuff I've seen, but like especially the Tunisian Pavilion at the 2017 Biennale. I also know that there have been a lot of different variations on that theme, but sort of the making a person who has not experienced what it means to be an immigrant go through the immigration gauntlet. And well, Simon, you've done a deeper dive on the Tunisian Pavilion than I have.
Yeah. In Problemista, it's a visual metaphor, right? There are a lot of those in this film. And the purpose of that metaphor is, like you were saying, it's to help people who have no real personal touchstones for this experience kind of understand it. This part of this film and this film as a whole, to me, in my cosmically worthless opinion, does a much better job of doing that than anything we saw at the 2017 Venice Biennale.
And I guess, wait, let's take a step back. I mean, this is supposed to be an accessible podcast about art and pop culture. So what is the Venice Biennale?
It is the Art Olympics, Chris.
Yes, and you and I have been there 3 times somehow. Like, we have never planned to go to the Biennale, but we always find ourselves in Europe. I think at 3 out of the past 4 times it has happened.
We are just that. We're those people. We are jet setters.
Yeah, and so we always pop down to Venice for the Biennale.
We've done it in the most like dirtbag ways possible.
Every time.
At least 2 out of the 3 times we've been.
Yeah, I mean, we went for the first time in 2017. That was when the Tunisian Pavilion that we're talking about was. And what was it called that year?
It was called Viva Arte Viva.
Right. And this year in 2024, we went again. And that Biennale was called Foreigners Everywhere. It's pretty common for the Biennale the past several times we've been to have a really strong immigrant presence, things that deal with immigration, things that deal with refugees.
I think at least for now.
Yeah.
And with the current situation in Italy, it seems like they're only going to have Italian nationalist curators in the future. So we'll see what happens with it.
Yeah, who knows? I mean, yeah, there's some weird political stuff going on with how it's going to be run in the future. So it might not even be worth going to in 2026.
So the way that the Biennale tends to work is that there are a few different sites. The 2 main ones are the Arsenale and the Giardini. Arsenale is a big former military building in Venice that really functions as a traditional art museum. There are various different projects throughout the whole thing from artists all over the world. And then the Giardini itself is this garden that has a bunch of these pavilions that are each from a country.
Independent buildings.
Yeah, they all stand alone. They all are, or mostly are built in a way that is meant to reflect some sensibility of that nation's culture from the time.
So like the American pavilion is very neoclassical. The Finnish pavilion is in an old shipping container. It's really delightful.
Yeah, the Biennale itself goes back to the late 19th century, but a lot of these pavilions were built like in the 60s, I believe. And so you do see some Cold War who's a power to this in the way it's constructed. I mean, it's inherently political and it's always working in that shadow. And
exactly the way the Olympics are.
Exactly. So yeah, there are plenty of countries that don't have a pavilion there who you will see have these satellite shows in different places around Venice.
And sometimes like this year, Russia gave their pavilion to, was it Bolivia? Who don't normally have a Gardini pavilion. Is it Gardini?
I mean, we're in Chicago, so it's
Giardiniera pavilion. And so lots of stuff like that tends to happen at the Biennale as well.
Yeah. It walks this balance between like difficult to approach contemporary art that needs a lot of explanation, and then also it being essentially a theme park.
Yes.
But in 2017, the first time either of us had ever been, a lot of the work was around refugees, immigration, a big topic in Venice, a big topic throughout all of Europe. There were a few projects that were around immigration that year and around refugees. The Tunisian Pavilion, called The Absence of Paths, was 3 kiosks throughout Venice, one of which was in front of the place where you buy tickets for the Biennale at the Giardini. And it's a place where you can get your visa. It's a visa. It looks like a cheap little passport, and you get your thumb stamp put on it. And it is meant to satirize the totally Byzantine processes you have to go through to become, a quote unquote legal person in a country, which is very much what Alejandro is doing in this shot with that vertical maze in Problemista. The thing with the kiosk is that they had what they made a large point of saying were real life refugees working them, that they had brought there to Venice on some kind of visa for this project for a certain amount of time during the Biennale, which usually runs several months out of the year.
Well, there's something about that feels very World's Fair to me when it comes to bringing people in to represent a country, like the way that they did back in like the Chicago World's Fair and stuff like that.
Yeah. giving context to these kiosks themselves, they are right there next to the places selling pizza, selling kebabs, selling souvenirs. And just to describe a little bit more of the frieza, it looks kind of vaguely like a watermarked official document. You put your thumb on it, it says frieza on it. Then there's a form that says origin, unknown, destination, unknown, status, migrant. And the stamp has the name of the project called The Absence of Paths. And then in the middle of the stamp, it says only human.
So I know you like did a ton of research into this, but like through experiencing that and through seeing it in person and taking part in it, I felt that it was corny.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm not the only person to say this, and certainly not the first to say this, but there's something really kind of like migrant petting zoo about
yes,
this whole
definitely.
thing. Like the Biennale already feels this way.
Yes.
It is spectacle.
Some work is more successful than others. And I think what I'm getting at is this movie felt like a successful version of telling that immigrant tale.
I mean, this wasn't the only project at the Biennale that year that was doing something very much like this. The Icelandic-Danish artist Olafur Eliasson, I think that's how you say his name. I have no idea. I've only read it. I've seen it on so many coffee table books, but I've never asked.
You've been to Iceland and you don't know how to pronounce names in Icelandic?
You're
terrible.
You're Olafur's house, but no one would tell me where it was.
I spent most of my time trying to figure out how to pronounce fjord.
Yeah, it's such a challenging place. He had this project called Greenlight, or his studio did. He is one person and runs a giant studio, but they had a project where you were invited to this workshop in Venice where you are guided by, they made a point of pointing out, were real migrants who were brought here for this project as well, to collaboratively build this green light structure that Eliasson designed himself. And the idea is that, to quote directly from the artist himself, Greenlight displays a modest strategy for addressing the challenges and responsibilities arising from the current situation and shines a light on the value of collaborative work and thinking. This is where it gets really petting zoo. You come into this workshop, you glue some popsicle sticks together around a green LED as a symbol, which, I don't know, feels really 10th grade English lit class reading The Great Gatsby object that is like, here's the green light. Everyone's allowed. It's like the frieza. And you spend your time as a rich person going through this workshop with people who are brought there for a limited amount of time. They have to go back to their countries because of real life issues. And this is somehow trying to communicate the migrant experience to rich Westerners, rich Northerners. This is all to say, Problemista does a much better job with this. And it's like hour and 50-minute runtime or whatever it is.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's a much smaller commitment. So I think like with that, Alejandro has to figure out how to make money for those immigration fees. And so he turns to Craiglist in order to make money under the table. He takes a gig selling salon packages on the street to women who do not want to talk about their hair to him. And just like as an aside, there's a few sequences with this like embodiment of Craiglist, who is this guy in like just in a nest of stuff,
a like, vortex, of trash,
and bisexual lighting, and I love him. It is the best performance.
It's one more of those little bits of this film that like really just make every little moment feel like there's some artistry in it, right?
Yes.
Like it makes everything kind of feel alive and weird and gross and beautiful at the same time.
Yes. It kind of reminds you of the trash that's on the side of the street as well that you see throughout the film. Definitely not making an attempt to like cover up the fact that New York streets are just lined with trash for some reason in our year of our Lord 2024. Really don't get it. I really don't get it, you guys. Best city in the whole world, and yet...
I mean, I hear the rat lobby there is pretty strong.
That is true, yeah. You don't want to cross the rat lobby. So while he's selling these hair packages, he gets a call from Elizabeth to meet at a cafe, and there she says that she's decided that together they will curate a show of Bobby's work in order to help pay the archiving fees for his body. And Alejandro is then tasked with collecting 13 of Bobby's egg paintings, and she promises him that if he is successful, she'll sponsor him. And I just have to point out that in the background of the scene, there is a totally normal looking blonde woman sitting by herself trying to solve a Rubik's Cube.
Normal things you see in a cafe.
Yeah, totally normal New York cafe scene.
This is another little errant line from that scene. Alejandro explains that he's vegan. And Elizabeth says, "Oh, who else is vegan? Bill Gates? Someone awful."
Someone awful. 100%. Yeah, I wrote that down too. Because, we are both vegan. So we've had that exact experience 1,000 times. It's the same sort of like, who else is Jewish? Is it Bill Gates?
No, but my mother thinks he is.
Yes. Well, with that being said,
You wrote me this line. I want to read it. The
Okay.
way you wrote it. Simon. And that's it. Do it for Problemista Part 1.
why didn't you ever edit it?
Because it sounds normal to me now. I've read it so many times trying to understand it, and now it's just how I talk. So
Okay.
that's it. Do it for Part 1, everybody. This has been Untitled Podcast with Art.
Our music is by Layers and Layers. Check them out on Instagram. We'll link to it wherever you can find our links because I'm not going to make the mistake again of spelling that out. And check out their new album, Mantles.
We have a Patreon at patreon.com/untitledartpod where you can support us.
And you can find us online at untitledpod.art. Bye.
Bye.